Welcome to Through a Glass Darkly Radio. You're listening to us on United Public Radio. The intro music was Mark of the Doomslayer by Karl Casey at White Bat Audio. Welcome, friends. This is the second radio show of 2026, and what a crazy year it has been thus far. In the first 10 days of the year, there is an ongoing revolution in Iran. We've seized, as a country, the United States, the largest oil deposits in the world. And no, it's not going to go to Venezuela. We all know what the play is here. And then we have the president threatening to take Greenland from our allies in NATO, which is also bizarre. So it looks like 2026 is likely to be a banner year. Oh, and also in California, they're trying to pass a 5% net worth tax on billionaires, which is a complete and utter retardation, given that it will force people to liquidate large amounts of assets, which in turn would help spur a stock market shock, let's call it. So silver is above $80 still. And yeah, 2026 looks to be a banner year. Just look to March and April. That's when the tides are most favorable for China to invade Taiwan. I mean, why not? The United States just took a huge swath of their potential oil supplies, or cut them off from their large swath of their oil supplies in Venezuela. Why not? Let it happen. The Europeans are, at least on Twitter, I'm constantly seeing tweets that they want to, they can defend themselves and all that good stuff. And I say let them, and then maybe we can all, as U.S. taxpayers, get a refund for kind of protecting them for the last 80 years. Um, I don't envy them, because the Russians would cut through them like shit through a goose. But to each their own. They keep talking about their wonderful social welfare system, which of course is the fact they're able to do that because they haven't had to provide their own defense for the last 80 years. We've subsidized it for them. So yeah, the U.S. taxpayers can use some relief. I just hope they enjoy eating borscht and drinking vodka, because that's what they will be doing if we pull back. Anyway, that's a completely insane year. And let's see. Let me take some look at the comments, and then we'll get started. Where was I? There we go. Greetings, Logan. Good to see you. The watermelon represents Palestine. The dove represents peace. You mean Fortnite? Yeah, there used to be a foreign affairs article called "Give War a Chance." That's my view of Palestine, Israel. I just keep us out of it and let the two just destroy each other. Like I could give a crap about either side. I certainly don't think it's right that the side with all the tanks and weapons and nuclear weapons gets subsidized by the U.S. taxpayer. That bothers me a lot, actually. But anyway, neither here nor there. Let's see. I'm really selling this. Who's selling what? Am I? Oh boy, it's all going to be all right. Okay, so DNS 5917 is saying, have you heard the rumors that the personnel that captured Maduro use sound-based tech that really messed people up? Yeah, I've heard rumors, but I don't think there's anything fancy about sonic weapons. I mean, we absolutely look. If you gave me, an unlimited budget in 6 months with like my engineering training from 20 years ago, I could probably design a sonic weapon that could liquefy your insides. I don't think it's hard to do, right? It's just like how much energy you need, how much power, and then you just put the right sonic frequency. I mean, literally, it's just. I'm trying to think what it is. It's like 2.4 gigahertz. Whatever your microwave oven runs at, that's all you need. You just aim that at somebody, and you'll just boil them from the inside. Like the technology's been there for 70 years, right? So that's a microwave weapon, but they might have other weapons that you can design with sonics. But yeah, I wouldn't be. I've heard the rumors, and I wouldn't be surprised if we had something like that. Legit question, spiritual ascension. Legit question: does America think it has any hope against China and Russia? Yeah, I mean, I'm more afraid of the Russians because they have 4 years of high intensity combat experience against advanced drone weapons and with advanced drone weapons. So they probably have the best tactics, techniques, and procedures in the world right now. 4 years ago, the United States could have cut through them like shit through a goose. Not anymore. And then the other problem is that the United States the government has so alienated its population, particularly among veterans, that in a war like that, they would have to resort to the draft, and that would pretty closely result in the closest thing that you would have to a internal rebellion. because veterans of like the global war on terrorism aren't buying the bullshit anymore, right? We don't believe we're not going to fight for the elites. And we're not going to let our children fight for the elites. Like we got nothing to do. We have no dog in this fight. So I think the bigger question is if we tried to go to war for some fig leaf reason against China or Russia, um, the U.S. government would have to fight its own people at the same time because you would need to go to a draft, and none of us are going to be willing to provide our children for the meat grinder because all the benefits accrue to the elites and to Israel. Full stop. So no thanks. In terms of what our military could do, we could wipe China's fleet in an afternoon in the South China Sea. It would be quick and bloody for them, bloodless for us. In Taiwan, it's just a question of how quickly can we get there and how far away can we stay from the Chinese missile batteries that are on the southeastern coast of China. So, but the Chinese have no wartime experience. They have absolutely none. I think they have a little bit in kind of the Himalaya region or on the Indian border, but they're not allowed to use weapons. So they have experience like clubbing Indian soldiers and vice versa, being clubbed by Indian soldiers, but that's about it. Yeah, they might probably highly motivated, but the level of military experience inside the U.S. military is unparalleled, and we're just the best at combined arms in the world, and we have the best training in the world, etc. But the Russians, I think, have a serious military now because they've kind of had to learn hard lessons of war. So, that said, there have been historical precedents in recent history before the Ukraine war. So in like 2017 or 2018, there was the Battle of Qasim, I think, or Bassam, something like that in Syria, where a handful of special force operatives destroyed the equivalent of a Russian mechanized battalion, even though it was all Wagner group stuff. I mean, they just got slaughtered. They lost hundreds of men, and the U.S. didn't lose anything. So that said, like after the kind of like the Ukrainian like corruption and all that stuff, I have nothing against the Russians. Like they've actually been remarkably restrained. If I were Putin, there would have been like plausibly deniable attacks on U.S. infrastructure by now, if there haven't already. I mean, there have been a bunch of ammunition plants that have gone up in flames, but like he's been pretty restrained and responsible. We have not been. So, because we have a bunch of amateurs running our foreign policy establishment now. It's not like back in the days of Ash Carter, like who was my thesis advisor, right? We have people like Hegseth who, is rocking Christian tattoos and has absolutely no policy experience whatsoever. He's a talking head on Fox News Network. So, and the guy before him was a 1020 from the U.S. military. Which 1020 is basically a affirmative action promote. Because I know people who worked with him, and he was dumb as shit, based on someone I know who worked closely with him. So, we have one guy who's a pretty boy yes man, and the guy before him was an affirmative action hire. So we haven't had a good Secretary of Defense in the last two administrations at all. Anyway, I'll just tell you what I think, and I'm not holding back because I've been, wokeism has negatively affected me and my family personally, so I don't hold back on this stuff. Anyway, he was an incompetent. I'll just leave it at that. Anyway, that's a long, meandering answer. The Taiwan problem is if they take Taiwan, it has over 90% of of the world's advanced semiconductor manufacturing foundries. And, during the Biden administration, they passed the CHIPS Act, which was a smart bill to pass. The problem is when the bill passed, they had so much wokeism built into the bill that those plants will never be built because there simply aren't enough minority engineers that like have actual degrees to fill these, affirmative action woke kind of positions. So it'll both be impractical and impossible to implement. So smart strategic move, absolutely retarded and stupid implementation. So once again, we shoot ourselves in the foot with wokeism. And I'm just going to say this publicly too, because again, wokeism has affected me personally. The ICE agents in Minnesota, that was an absolute 100% clean kill. Clean kill. It's about time that these white liberal women who think they're untouchable effed around and they finally found out. Maybe they'll realize that you don't like personally involve yourself in a federal investigation and block traffic and do all that stuff. Like it's about time. It's about time this stuff happens. So, and again, I was affected personally by people like this woman. So I really don't care. I have zero empathy. Zero empathy. I feel bad for her family that somebody was so stupid and got themselves killed. But I make no apologies about this. Zero. So anyway, I'm not gonna stay on it because this is personal for me. Like you F around and you find out. Like men have learned this stuff since they're kids. Like if you punch somebody, they're gonna punch back and you're gonna feel physical pain. Women are not socialized this way. And they're acting like they're unstoppable and nobody can touch them. Well, guess what? They can. And this is an example of that. So anyway, there's a lot of crazy. And then don't even get me started on the, like, do I write a check to the federal government or do a Somali daycare? Where should I send my check? Right? Or maybe I should just start a daycare, right? I mean, I could become a millionaire and just get money from the federal government. Why not? Right? Like, am I the only sucker who's like paying taxes still? Who's like following the law, who's doing the right thing, who's working like a slave so that these shitbags can take hundreds of billions of dollars from the federal government and send it back to a terrorist state or failed state in Africa? Are you kidding me? Anyway, that's where I am in 2026. Okay. All right, so we already have, I can't pronounce that. Pacific Space Base in Greenland, formerly known as Thule Air Base. Correct. All right. Trump wanting Greenland, I think he's going about it in a completely incompetent, insane way. By the way, speaking of Greenland, Ken Howry, who is the current ambassador of Denmark, okay, was my fraternity brother at Stanford. Just think through that because this affects, and I'll just I got stories. That's all I'm gonna say. I got stories, but just the world is so surreal, right? Like this guy, this failure. I mean, compared to my peers, I got into a fight in high school with the current CEO of Anheuser-Busch, okay? And then was a fraternity brothers with the guy who's currently the ambassador to Denmark, which is related. Denmark, as you all know, owns Greenland. So I don't even know what's going on with his world right now, but good luck with that. But yeah, I think it's insane that Trump is behaving the way he is. I mean, he's threatening an ally. It makes no sense. It makes actually, like, at that point, it's just like, well, we're not going to sell it to you at any price. Come get it. Come get it. And then there's like 51,000 people. It's not like they're going to be welcome us with open arms, right? You're going to have a rebellion there of people who were like your allies. It just doesn't, it makes no sense. It makes zero. But again, Trump was always incompetent from a geopolitical standpoint. I mean, bombing Iran was the first. The reason we had to bomb Iran is because the Israelis were going to run out of Arrow missiles in about 2 weeks. And the Iranians were not running out of ballistic missiles. So Tel Aviv would have been destroyed. That's the only reason we came in. We didn't destroy their nuclear program because we didn't attack all the targets. But, you know, as always, we're lied to about everything. But for everyone, you know, I did my master's thesis on bombing Iran's nuclear program, and my thesis advisor became Obama's Secretary of Defense. So I know what I'm talking about. We did not destroy their nuclear program. Okay, like it's just it's a bold lie. The good thing about Trump though is like he's lying. Like he's like what's the word for it? He's transparently lying. Where everybody else tries to cover their lies, he just lies like it's water. So anyway, do I think anything good would happen with that? No, nothing good will happen with that. And by the way, nothing that's going to happen with Venezuela. The initial attack was brilliant, like wonderful. But who's in charge now? We're not in charge. We have no boots on the ground. So if you can't enforce your authority, then you're not in charge. So who is? Who the hell's in charge? That's where they kind of maybe they have like a hit. Maybe the CIA has a hidden plan where they're bribing people and doing all that. I hope so, because if they don't, like that's another disaster waiting to happen. That's another like famine that could happen. So we'll see. Okay, do you want me to leave here too, Spirit? I don't know what you mean. Oh, okay. Don't address me. Cowabunga. Edwin Rivera, the one that got away. God, it's like 20 minutes in. I haven't even started. I have like a huge script too, man. Hey, Spider Bite. 5th gen effery. Full on, gloves off. Yeah, it's. Remember when defend someone who wishes to harm kids. Missing time. Remember when someone defended. I don't know what that means. Sean, Sonic Reducer Darkly. Okay, you will have to be more specific which control system because there are a ton of them. Hope all's well. Thank you, Pix. Yeah, yeah. I'm just going to talk about the UFO one. We need to build a low frequency device to put out bushfire. Bro, that's a very regimented army. Forgot to add that apparently it wasn't just physical damage. Some people reported hearing voices and hallucination, real voice of God stuff. I can tell you how to do that now. It's just it's infrasonics, right? So if like the sound wave frequencies below 20,000 hertz, or I think it's 2,000 hertz. So the humans can hear generally between 2,000 and 20,000 hertz, and they can't hear anything frequencies below and above that. But infrasonics, if that's why people will see things and hallucinate near like oceans. So if you look down at Big Sur, they'll see that that what are they called? Now I can't remember what they're called, but there's like these people, these shadows, like these 10-foot shadows that they'll see on the hills. And one theory is that people are getting hit with the infrasonic frequencies from the waves, the sound of the waves. So it does cause hallucination. So it's very easy to weaponize that. It's very easy to make a sound device that, again, you could give me, I don't know, 6 months and a minimal budget and I could figure it out. Right? It's not hard. Okay. Well, China has now that can reach our ships at Pearl Harbor. I recently just read that online. Yeah, they just have to be able to target where those weapons are, and if they do that, we have ballistic missiles that can hit Three Gorges Dam, and 600 million Chinese are dead overnight. So, and you don't have to use a nuke at all for that. So they could try, but it's going to have to be very calibrated on either side. Okay, missing. Are you okay? I was talking to Sean. I think he's. Oh boy. L eats. Interesting. Good point, Spider. Okay. What harassment is going on? I'm serious. It's an honest question. I didn't see anything that seemed to jump out, but maybe I'm missing it. Uh, oh, you were called a guys. Just cut it out. I mean, we're all mature adults. I didn't even notice that there was a thing going on, but let's just be adults. Yeah, let's. All right. So General Eisenhower was right about congressional military industrial complex. Yeah, let's just be friendly. It seems to me that there's just messages passing and people are just reading into them, but I could be wrong. It's just I don't know what's going on. I'm completely foolish. I feel like yeah, Sally, thank you. Thank you for putting into words I could not. I feel like this is a misunderstanding. Yeah, I think it's just a misunderstanding, guys. Has anybody considered since Trump is a wannabe gangster, we may be looking at Russia, China going into a partnership? I still think U.S. Marines are going to flies force a planet on Earth. Uh, yeah, I don't know about the Chinese, but I think Russia. What's her name? Angela Ford said that she saw like a vision that like U.S. and Russia become friends again. I can actually see that. I mean, like I know some stuff from like behind the scenes, some of the crap that like we've been all over that Ukraine war. Like we've been very directive in that war, and the Russians have been very restrained. I'm sure they've done some fuckery in the background, but I think we need to de-escalate as soon as possible. Like this is stupid. They've been they've been restrained against the U.S. I'm not saying they've been restrained in the UK in Ukraine. I'm not saying that. I'm saying they've been very restrained against the U.S. If I were Putin, there, you know, there would have been well, you would have seen political officials disappearing in the night if I were Putin. Right? There would have been direct action against some of these officials. But he hasn't done that. He hasn't, he may have been responsible. I'm speculating for some ammunition plant fires in the United States, which, because we live in basically a similar totalitarian regime, it's never reported. You have to actually search for it. But if you do a very cultivated search, you'll find that there's these weird ammunition plant fires that have been happening in the United States. But I think Putin has been remarkably restrained versus kind of the shit that we've been doing in Ukraine, right? I mean, and this goes beyond like sending billions of dollars and stuff like that. So, I mean, first of all, we caused the revolution there in 2014. The CIA did. So, like, we started it, and then they seized Crimea. Russia seized Crimea in a bloodless revolution. Which, I mean, if they were doing the same stuff in Mexico, right? I mean, would we be restrained in Mexico? Absolutely not. Okay. Oh boy. Yeah, thank you, Tim Beck. I'm just when it personally affects you, you don't give any fucks anymore. You just don't. Okay. Yeah. So DNS says wokeism is the reason I left the military as well. I refused to attend the training. Well, that's the other thing. Like it is radicalized all these people and like they're doing stuff that's completely illegal and they think they're righteous. And it's just like you don't interfere in a federal investigation, right? Like you're defending people who broke the law. Like what are you doing? You know? And you try to run somebody over, they're going to tag you. Yeah, it's definitely all downhill from there. So Scott Ian said, total liberal friend, if I did what she did, I would expect to be dead. That friend unfriended me. Yeah, good. Good. You don't want friends like that. Yep, every action has yep, that's right. And people who've been suppressed systematically for 10 years, it's like compressing a spring. And then the spring is, look, I used to be slightly right of center. I'm far right now. And I had an experience at a workplace setting that made me that way. So, yeah, I'm not, no apologies anymore. Like, I recognize who the enemy is. So, oh, guys, stop fighting. Stop fighting. I don't know. I don't know what's going on. 420. I don't. I don't know. I. Come on, guys, stop. Hey, Woo Riders DG writes, "Hey Sean, hope you and all the family are doing great. God bless you all. God bless everyone." Oh boy. Who took the moderator away? What? Don't get mad at other people. I was the one who took the moderator away. You could be mad at me. Who was I don't even know who the moderator was. All right. Tim Beck says, for what it's worth, Sean well wishes. Yeah, you too, Tim. Whole lot of darkness here tonight. I know. I know. I shouldn't have set the tone. I set the tone. I just went on a rant about all the bad things that are happening, and now like the whole chat's like gone negative. I'm sorry. I should be more positive. Okay, so did you hear the testimony of the Venezuelan guard who said they were hit with sonic boom type energy weapons, gave them nosebleeds, and they couldn't move? Uh, I mean, I've heard it kind of anecdotally, but I'm not surprised. Those weapons are, you can make those weapons. They've had them for a while, I think. Oh, so Denmark once owned most of England too. This part of England was called Danimark at the time. Huh. Yeah, Mitch, mysterious and wonderful world. Southern Spear. Oh, as soon as I got back from break, because I worked an insane amount for break to finish all the January interviews, I have like 6 of them in various stages of process. So I've edited all the audio on 3 of them. I'm halfway through another one's audio, and then I just recorded 2 more with what's his name? I just interviewed him today. His last name is Lasper Lasperitis or Lapseritis. Yeah, Lapseritis. Kawani Lapseritis. I just did 2 interviews with him today. Okay, so Pix saying we have had sonic. Yep, that's correct. This scalar system is well developed with untold downstream apps. Yeah, by the way, if you ask ChatGPT, they're like scalar waves. They don't exist. They absolutely exist. It's just the cross product of the waves is like equal to 0 or something like that, like the energy. Operation Burrito fart and explode. Don't remove it. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, yeah. Just be kind to each other. No ad hominems, please. Yes. Did I give any? Did I do any ad hominems? If I did, I'm sorry. That's bad, bad, bad argumentation. Solite expat. Oh, come on. Let's not be fighting. This is our place to relax. Yes. Like, I have so much in the script. I might not even get through it. Okay, for sure. Tim Beck saw a White House briefing with Donald Rumsfeld where he was asked about direct energy weapons. He responded saying they were early stages of interesting. Russia asked, yeah, they did. Russia absolutely asked to be part of NATO in the Clinton administration. I think it was in 1994, actually. Uh, okay, Alexander Dugin's idea about cultural blocks is fairly staying. By the way, it wasn't just his idea. It was Samuel Huntington in Clash of Civilizations, right? And he wrote that in like the late or mid 90s. So, yeah, and he's been largely correct. Oh boy. Okay, so Woo Riders DG question. Sean could have already ended Ukraine conflict. Why are they dragging it out or Russia's not a superpower anymore? I I think they didn't fully they've mobilized, but they haven't fully mobilized. I think that's why. Plus, Ukraine is getting like free satellite imagery and coaching from the United States military. According to U.S. generals, Putin has been restrained. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So Justin Miller said they grabbed the mining center of Ukraine. Mission accomplished. Yeah, but they haven't completely destroyed Ukrainian manhood yet. So that's part two. They need to like completely and utterly rout the Ukrainian military, so that there's no threat there. Yeah. Well, there's a Donbass might not be Russian, but there are a lot of Russians in Donbass. That's a problem. Feminism is a Cold War tactic. Probably because it's done irreparable damage to our culture. Okay, question. Russia could have ended conflict in Ukraine a while ago while they are dragging. Routes and resources. Hey, I'm rolling with boner dice. Good to see you. Tim Beck, am I familiar with the Canadian military? A little bit. I mean, they're good, but they're small. Okay, where do you get that she tried to run him over? He was ready to shoot as soon as he put his phone in the other hand and got in front of her vehicle. Seems they're trained to give themselves excuses. Clean kill. I'm not going to elaborate. When a law enforcement officer tells you to stop, you don't drive his vehicle toward him on black ice. You just don't. So either she willfully disobeyed an order or she was stupid. Either way, you don't obey a lawful order. I mean, you find out. Zero empathy. Zero. Far right is a designation from the left. You are sensible. That's right. That's right. Charlie Murphy. How's Bosley doing? Oh no. Yeah, but they personally targeted my family. So I really like I'm not gonna I'm trying not to say anymore because because it might go beyond lack of empathy. Yeah. I did like 6 Bigfoot interviews. Now people are gonna be like, this has become a Bigfoot channel, even though it hasn't. It's just I've done 6 of them. But it's good. I have all like I only need one more interview and I'll have content for all of February. So Canada enlisted government workers 6 weeks training to fill the gaps, 25% employment in government and government contracts. Bigfoot Winfrey, I presume. Uh Philip Blair says I'm anti woke, but I'm not far right. Look up interviews Norman Finkelstein gave for his anti woke book. All right. Well, like I said, I was slightly right of center, and then my personal experience just blasted me to the far right. Uh, so Woo Riders DG, who thinks MAGA is actually a dark demonic signal group, dark magic? Yeah, I don't know. Could be. Yeah, he's a good dude. Kwani's a good dude. What's weird about the Ukraine-Russia war? They all have GoPros on. Okay, so DNS is saying, I think this year is the year we start to see ridiculous sci-fi level weapons and used very publicly, but just a buzz. No, I think you're probably right because all this stuff is escalating. Uh, are there a lot of Bigfoot encrypted channels out there? I haven't really. Yeah, maybe. Maybe I aspire to be. I don't know. Logan Clark writes, you aren't far right, Sean. As someone with the opposite side of your empathy, I appreciate wholly and passionately your exposition. I find it so necessary and refreshing. I appreciate that, Stu of Matt. All right. So Tim DNS, I wouldn't bet against you. All right. Oh my God. It's like we're 40 minutes in. I gotta read fast. So my apologies in advance. But okay, a few quick things before I get going. Number one, if you are subscribed and you think you're subscribed, please check because YouTube unsubscribes people. YouTube will tell you they don't do that, but months of counterexamples have proven that that's exactly what they do. So please double check. And then if you've watched a lot of things, you like what you see, I would really appreciate subscription. You know, to subscribe, it doesn't cost you anything, et cetera, et cetera. Second point, once I start reading, I generate these scripts using AI. I come up with the topics, but you know, this is the only part of my channel where I'm reading something generated from AI. Everything else is organic and this and that. But for people who don't like that, I totally understand. But I think they would hate it even more if I just did it and acted like I was, you know, writing all this stuff myself. I just simply don't have time, people. I work 100 hours a week, multiple different things. I'm exhausted. I have to do this if I want to still do this radio show. So anyway, and I feel a little guilty about it. I'm just honest. Yep. See, there's one right. Like, so missing time 420. So this is the only channel I've been a phantom unsub from. I know. I'll allow it because I'm using this fancy camera. So okay. All right. I got to get started. So here we go. The control system in UFO phenomenological lore. Introduction. UFOs and related anomalous encounters have long challenged conventional explanations beyond the popular extraterrestrial visitors narrative. Some ufologists and thinkers propose a more elusive, systematic intelligence at work behind UFO phenomenon. One influential idea is that of a control system, famously associated with researcher Jacques Vallée's speculative theory that UFO manifestations are part of a program manipulating human consciousness and culture. Well, I'm reading fast, people, but I literally have like 30 pages to read. Rather than literal spacecraft from other planets, these encounters might serve as staged events or symbols engineered by a non-human agency to guide or perturb humanity's development. This paper explores the control system hypothesis in depth, situating it within historical, philosophical, socio-cultural, and psychological context. We will examine Vallée's framework and its parallels in John A. Keel's ultra-terrestrial hypothesis, discuss the role of media and collective perception in shaping anomalous experiences, draw links to ideas like the simulation hypothesis and Jungian archetypes, and consider historical precedents from folklore, religion, and demonology that mirror modern UFO lore. The aim is a nuanced, critical synthesis of these ideas rather than sensationalism, assessing how the control system concept challenges our understanding of reality and the UFO enigma. This inquiry is speculative and interdisciplinary. We draw upon ufological literature, analytical psychology, cultural theory, and comparative folklore to trace patterns, suggesting a purposeful program behind UFO phenomena. Key texts by Jacques Vallée, John Keel, Carl Jung, Terence McKenna, and others are referenced to anchor the discussion. Short thematic sections will develop facets of the control system idea, its origin in UFO studies, its cultural and psychological implications, and its echoes in mythic or religious narratives. While evidence for such a control system remains circumstantial and controversial, exploring it yields valuable insights into how humans interpret the unknown. By examining UFO lore through multiple lenses, we can better understand why these phenomena have been described as a mirror for our beliefs and a catalyst for a paradigm shift in thought. Duncan, powered by Duncan. By the way, I don't have to check the block YouTube because Duncan's not paying me anything. This paper proceeds as follows. Section 1 introduces Jacques Vallée's control system hypothesis and its main claims. Section 2 considers John Keel's related perspective of ultraterrestrials and an occult control mechanism. Section 3 discusses how media and mass perception feed into UFO experiences, highlighting psychosocial patterns. Section 4 explores Jungian and archetypal interpretations of UFOs as manifestations of the collective unconscious. Section 5 delves into ideas of consciousness manipulation, a trickster archetype, and even simulation theory as frameworks to make sense of a possible control system. Section 6 looks at historical precedents, folklore, religious visions, demonological encounters for continuity with modern UFO reports. Finally, the conclusion synthesizes these threads, pondering the implications of viewing UFO phenomena as a control system guiding humanity and what that reveals about the relationship between the phenomena and human consciousness. That's not important. Okay, let's start with Jacques Vallée's control system hypothesis. And by the way, I'm going to read really fast for a little bit, and then I'll check in the comments to see what you all think. One of the most seminal contributions to this topic comes from Jacques Vallée, a French-American computer scientist, astronomer, and pioneering ufologist. Vallée, known for his data-driven yet iconoclastic approach, challenged the simplistic extraterrestrial hypothesis of UFOs early on. Instead of assuming UFOs or alien spacecraft from other planets, Vallée suggested we consider a more complex and multidimensional explanation. In his books Passport to Magonia, The Invisible College, and Messengers of Deception, Vallée gradually developed the idea that UFO phenomena is not what it appears to be on the surface, but acts as a sort of control mechanism or educational system for humanity. Vallée's control system theory posits that an unknown non-human intelligence is orchestrating UFO events as stage dramas meant to influence human belief systems, culture, and evolution. Crucially, this theory does not pin the blame on a single race of extraterrestrials or straightforward alien visitors. Rather, Vallée entertains the possibility of interdimensional forces or intelligences that cohabit our reality and have been interacting with humanity across history. These forces could be beings from other dimensions, a form of planetary or Gaian consciousness, or even expressions of the collective unconscious. Vallée means deliberately agnostic about their true nature. What matters is what the phenomenon do. They present us with high strangeness, bizarre sightings, entity encounters, altered perceptions, absurd scenarios that function like symbolically charged interventions in our world. According to Vallée, UFO incidents often display patterns akin to reinforcement schedule or training programs. In The Invisible College, he reported analyzing thousands of UFO cases and finding periodic waves and clusters of sightings that didn't align with random chance. A UCLA anthropologist noted these patterns resembled how one might condition an animal by providing stimuli in certain time intervals. Vallée hypothesized that the phenomenon is a control system pulling on the delicate levers of the human imagination, reprogramming our software. In effect, in plainer terms, UFO encounters provoke changes in how people think. They can inspire new religious movements, sow new mythologies, or simply force witnesses and society at large to question reality and consider more expansive paradigms. A striking aspect of many UFO and close encounter reports is their surreal, nonsensical quality. Vallée emphasizes that absurd, dreamlike elements are not mere accident. They may be a feature deliberately engineered to evade our rational understanding yet impact our worldview. In his view, absurdity is an essential feature of the phenomenon that fatigues the rational mind. Sometimes the phenomenon behaves like a dolphin. It plays with us, Vallée told an interviewer. By presenting witnesses with the utterly bizarre, for instance, entities collecting soil samples while wearing outlandish outfits or contactees receiving gibberish messages, the phenomena essentially defies our expectations, forcing us to engage with it on deeper, intuitive, or mythic levels. Vallée suggests the trickster-like behavior might be meant to teach us something, perhaps to look beyond the surface of the encounter to its deeper mechanism, even to the mechanism of perception itself. In a 1969 paper, he mused, are the UFOs windows rather than objects, hinting that each sighting might be a window into another level of reality as much as a physical craft. This part of the control system's pedagogy could be to induce us to question our own reality framework by confronting us with a phenomenon that should not exist according to our orthodox science. Central to Vallée's hypothesis is that the control system is flexible and adaptive. It doesn't show the same face to every culture or era. Instead, it uses the symbols and myths of each period to achieve its influence. Vallée and others point out that what we call UFOs in the modern technological age bear a striking resemblance to earlier ages' accounts of fairies, angels, demons, or miraculous apparitions. In Passport to Magonia, Vallée described dozens of historical cases, medieval fairy abductions, airship sightings in the 1890s, religious visions whose narrative structure mirrors 20th century UFO encounters and abductions. For example, Celtic folklore tells of fairies who abduct humans, sometimes for reproductive purposes, and leave magic circles on the ground, elements uncannily parallel in modern alien abduction stories of missing time and crop circles. In Vallée's view, the phenomenon presents itself in culturally palatable guises. In devout religious epochs, it may appear as the Virgin Mary or as a saint. In an animistic culture as nature spirits. In our sci-fi age as spacecraft and aliens. The underlying phenomenon may be the same, but we interpret it through the mythic lens familiar to us. This adaptability makes the control system especially effective. It can shape mass beliefs by playing on whatever imagery will be the most compelling at that historical moment. As an example, Vallée draws attention to the famous apparition of Our Lady of Guadalupe in 1531. According to reports, an indigenous peasant, Juan Diego, encountered a glowing female entity later canonized as Virgin Mary, who left miraculous physical evidence, the icon on the tilma, and catalyzed the conversion of millions to Catholicism in New Spain. Vallée notes the staggering result. In the 6 years that followed the incident, over 8 million Indians were baptized. He suggests such events could be interpreted as symbolic interventions by some other for the purpose of large-scale social transformation. Similarly, Vallée retells how Joseph Smith's founding visions of angelic beings in golden plates launched the Mormon religion, which had significant societal and even political consequences in 19th century America. In both cases, a transcendent encounter led to new belief systems that reshaped communities. From Vallée's perspective, the UFO control system might have been operating in such events under different names, nudging humanity's spiritual and cultural evolution via well-timed visions or encounters. These historical precedents will be discussed further in a future section. Importantly, Vallée does not claim to know the motive or end goal of the control system. He entertains two broad possibilities, which need not be mutually exclusive. One, training or testing. Some other is training us to a new kind of behavior, using UFO dramas to acclimate us to concepts we might otherwise reject, such as the existence of other dimensions or the malleability of physics and mind. Two, communication for survival. The phenomenon might be projecting the imagery which is necessary for our own long-term survival beyond the unprecedented crisis of the 20th century. In other words, it could be guiding us through a perilous evolutionary juncture, perhaps by instilling new ideas or warnings. Vallée floated this latter notion in the 1970s when Cold War fears and environmental anxieties loomed. UFO visions of advanced technologies or benevolent spacemen could have been a psychological salve or ideological prompt during an era of existential dread. However, Vallée himself acknowledges the ambivalence of these effects. While UFO mythology can inspire hope or unity, Jung saw circular saucer as a mandala symbol of wholeness, mitigating Cold War anxieties. It might also reinforce problematic ideas. For instance, blind faith in technology or authority. The control system's true purpose thus remains an open question, one that goes to the heart of why the phenomenon, as Vallée calls it, is so enigmatic. In summary, Jacques Vallée's control system hypothesis reframes UFOs as deliberate social psychological mechanisms engineered by an unknown intelligence. These mechanisms utilize spectacle, absurdity, and cultural symbolism to shape human perceptions and perhaps accelerate cognitive or spiritual evolution. UFOs become less about vehicles and more about messages or metalogs, a term Vallée used, between humanity and another. This paradigm invites us to study UFO encounters not just as physical events, but as text or communication to be interpreted. It also implies that any investigation of UFOs must cross into psychology, sociology, religious studies, and folklore, not merely aerodynamics or astronomy. Vallée's theory, provocative and unorthodox, laid the groundwork for viewing UFO phenomenon as multi-layered control system entwined with human consciousness. All right. Woo! Then we move on to John Keel and the ultra-terrestrial system of control. Another major feature who arrived at a similar conclusion through a very different route was American journalist and paranormal investigator John A. Keel. Famous for books like Operation Trojan Horse and The Mothman Prophecies, Keel initially set out to document UFO sightings, but ended up positing an entire occult or metaphysical system of control behind not only UFOs, but a range of Fortean phenomena. Keel's ideas often paralleled Vallée's, though he used his own terminology, most notably the concept of ultra-terrestrials, entities that are not extraterrestrials from their planet, but earthbound or interdimensional beings that have always been here masquerading under different guises. John Keel became convinced that UFOs were just a modern dress of a much older phenomenon. By the late 1960s, after investigating waves of UFO sightings, contactee tales, Men in Black encounters, and even cryptid sightings, such as Mothman in West Virginia, Keel hypothesized an underlying, indefinable, and certainly incomprehensible system manipulating these events. He wrote that he believed in an occult or metaphysical system of control that has existed since the dawn of mankind. Much like Vallée, Keel admitted that the exact nature or purpose of the system was unclear to him, but he was certain UFOs were part of it. In other words, flying saucers and alien visitor narratives were seen as surface manifestations of a deeper phenomenon that also gave rise to earlier legends of demons, fairies, monsters, and miraculous apparitions. Keel explicitly borrowed from Charles Fort, the early 20th century collector of anomalies, who half-jokingly speculated that the Earth is a farm and we are someone's property. Keel took Fort's hint seriously. Perhaps we are being bred or managed by unseen landlords, with UFOs as one interface of that interaction. In Operation Trojan Horse, Keel mapped out how historical concepts as non-human entities, whether he called angels, jinn, devils, or elves, shared uncanny similarities with modern UFO. Occupant reports flying lights in the sky, beastly creatures terrorizing villages, women succubi, and men in black sedans. All in Keel's view emanated from one polymorphic intelligence, playing an elaborate cosmic Trojan horse trick on humanity. The Trojan horse metaphor signifies deception. The phenomenon presents itself as benign or at least comprehensible within our belief system, for instance, as space aliens during the space age, but conceal their true source and agenda. Keel noted that deception was a recurring theme in UFO and paranormal encounters. Contactees in the 1950s were often fed false prophecies or absurd claims by the supposed Space Brothers. In his Mothman Prophecies investigation, Keel himself received mysterious phone messages from entities claiming to be aliens, which led him on wild goose chases and predicted events that did not occur. The tricksterish behavior convinced him that misdirection and manipulation were core tactics of the controlling intelligences. Keel introduced the term ultraterrestrials to describe the intelligence behind the curtain. He chose the word to avoid the conventional assumptions of extraterrestrial, which implies physical ET beings from another star, and also to sidestep religious terms like spirits or demons, though he acknowledged the overlap. Ultraterrestrials in Keel's usage were superior non-human entities indigenous to Earth or its hidden dimensions. They might coexist unseen, perhaps in a parallel reality or at a different frequency, which he called the superspectrum, as Keel speculated in his 1975 book, The Eighth Tower. These beings could project illusions and manipulate human perception to disguise themselves in whatever form worked best. Thus, in earlier centuries, they played the role of pagan gods or legendary creatures. In modern times, they don the mask of extraterrestrial visitors because that is what our culture can imagine. The ultraterrestrial hypothesis essentially extends Vallee's interdimensional control system with a slightly more ominous twist. Keel often suggested the intelligences might be exploitative or even parasitic, feeding off human fear or gullibility. He wrote, for instance, that human beliefs and folklore might be the product of deliberate seeding by the system, keeping us confused and unaware of the true nature of reality. Despite the dark tone, Keel's contribution was profoundly influential. He firmly planted the idea that UFOs are part of a larger planetary mystery, a puzzle that transcends nuts and bolts spacecraft narratives. As one scholarly analysis notes, the idea of a control system was the basis for Keel's ultraterrestrial hypothesis, his most enduring contribution to the UFO controversy. Interestingly, Keel at times downplayed his own theory in later years, cautioning researchers not to take it too seriously. Friends have recounted that Keel could be a trickster himself. He enjoyed weaving outrageous ideas and wasn't always transparent about his true beliefs. Nonetheless, the consistency of patterns he identified, bridging UFOs, ghost lights, creature sightings, psychic phenomena, and the presence of deception and absurdity throughout, reinforced for many that a unified intelligence was stage managing the theater of the strange. Keel's ultra-terrestrial control system inevitably invites the age-old questions: are these influences good, evil, or neutral? On this, opinions diverge. Keel personally leaned toward a suspicious, if not outright hostile, view of the phenomenon. He spoke of the Trojan horse, entitled one chapter, The Gods of Eden, implying meddling in human affairs with possibly self-serving motives. He also noted how so many so-called alien encounters had a demonic flavor involving terror, paralysis, sexual assaults, and lies, hallmarks of historical demonology. Indeed, Keel quipped that UFOs could be demonic and alien at the same time. If one allows that our ancestors' demons might have been ultraterrestrials all along. This line of thought resonated especially with some evangelical Christian writers who seized on Keel's ideas to outright equate UFO beings with demons in Satan's service. For example, certain Christian ufologists interpret alien abductions as literal demonic possessions or spiritual attacks, and UFOs as deceptive signs and wonders predicted in apocalyptic scripture. Keel himself did not frame it in strictly Christian terms, but he acknowledged the overlap. For some evangelical Christians and proponents of UFO-related conspiracy theories, ultraterrestrials are shorthand for demons controlled by Satan. On the other hand, some researchers and experiencers view the controlling intelligence in a more positive or educative light, akin to Vallee's more optimistic hint that it could be preparing us for long-term survival. This more benign interpretation sees the control system as a necessary cosmic teacher or trickster that challenges humanity to grow. Such an idea aligns with deep psychology or shamanic traditions, where a trickster figure causes chaos only to catalyze renewal and insight. In later section, we will explore the trickster archetype and consciousness aspects in more detail. For Keel, however, any benevolence was deeply ambiguous. As he put it, men have always been aware of this system on different levels and have tried to define and worship it. That's what theology is all about. But ultimately, it remained elusive. John Keel's work, despite its unorthodox and sensational style at times, buttressed the notion that UFOs cannot be understood in isolation. They are one part of a spectrum of anomalies indicating a layer of reality interacting with our own. He urged that investigators study UFOs alongside psychic phenomena, historical miracles, folklore, and even cryptids, because only a synthesis could reveal the meta pattern of control. In effect, Keel is mapping out the psychosocial and paraphysical context in which the control system operates. His legacy in UFO lore is that, like ultra-terrestrial, high strangeness, and superspectrum, are now common when discussing encounters that defy the extraterrestrial hypothesis. The convergence of Keel's and Vallee's independent researches, neither initially aware of the other's full conclusions, is striking. Both concluded that the UFO phenomenon behaves as is orchestrated to influence human consciousness, often through deception and symbolism. This will lead us into the next consideration: how human perception and culture play into the equation. All right. We doing on time. And how am I doing on bead. All right. I'm not even a third of the way through, folks. Need the coffee to read faster. Media, myth, and mass perception. UFOs as a socio-cultural feedback loop. If a cultural system is guiding UFO encounters, it operates in a complex interplay with human perception and culture. This section examines how media narratives, collective imagination, and psychosocial factors shape UFO phenomena and possibly how the phenomenon in turn shapes our mass perceptions. Far from being a one-way street of aliens imposing visions on passing humans, the relationship may be a feedback loop. Our expectations and myths influence what we report, and genuine anomalies exploit those expectations to reinforce certain beliefs. Researchers who advocate the psychosocial hypothesis argue that many UFO reports can be explained by psychological and social dynamics rather than exotic hardware. They point out a telling observation. The content of UFO sightings and close encounters often tracks pre-existing cultural images and media tropes. For instance, detailed descriptions of flying saucer spacecraft and humanoid alien pilots only became common after those ideas were popularized in mass media around 1947 with Kenneth Arnold. Prior to the famous Kenneth Arnold sighting in June 1947, which coined the term flying saucers, people who saw strange things in the sky described them in very different terms: mystery airships, ghost rockets, etc., depending on the era. Once the news media broadcast Arnold's story of 9 disc-like objects skipping through the air within weeks, reports of flying saucer sightings became a daily occurrence. In summer 1947, the public, primed by headlines, started seeing what they now expected to see. Scholars note that many features of early Cold War UFO reports resembled a host of science fiction tropes from pulp magazines and B movies of the preceding decades. In other words, the collective imagery was set, and reality, or perception, obliged by providing matching experiences. As decades went on, this pattern continued. The emergence of the alien abduction narrative in the 1960s with standardized elements like missing time, medical exams, gray-skinned aliens, etc., occurred in parallel with sci-fi novels, television, and film depicting film depictions of the very motifs. Cases like Betty and Barney Hill's abduction, widely publicized from 1965 onward, became the template, but researchers such as Martin Kottmeyer have shown that how even the Hill case appeared influenced by an episode of a TV show, The Outer Limits, that aired shortly before Barney Hill's hypnotic sessions, an episode featuring an eerily similar bug-eyed alien. The psychosocial view that holds that mass media and cultural narratives provide scripts that some witnesses unconsciously follow when reporting extraordinary experiences. Memory, being fallible and imaginative, may fill in unknown aspects of a stimulus, say a light in the sky, with familiar story elements. However, the psychosocial hypothesis does not necessarily mean all UFO encounters are hallucination or hoaxes. Many proponents still consider the subject worthy of study. They simply urge that human factors be given primary weight. They point to evidence of cultural tracking. For example, in the 1950s and 60s, numerous contactees claimed physical meetings with Venusians and Martians, being from planets we now know are uninhabitable. These claims virtually vanished once space science advanced. Similarly, the prevalent images of aliens evolved from early humanoids to 1970s tall Nordics to post-1980s diminutive grays, reflecting changing pop culture. So, for instance, the 1977 movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind and Whitley Strieber's best-selling Communion of 1987 both imprinted the gray alien archetype. Such historical shifts in reported aliens indicate that witnesses are not interacting with a fixed, objective race of beings. Instead, the encounters seem partly molded by contemporary ideas and myths. From a control system perspective, one can interpret this in a few ways. Skeptically, one might say the control system is merely our own myth-making faculty at work. UFOs are modern folklore or visionary experiences that respond to psychological needs. Jung took a stance like this, calling UFOs a modern myth expressing collective hopes and fears. We return to Jung in the later section. On the other hand, if one believes genuine external intelligence has evolved, the cultural mirroring might be the method by which that intelligence interfaces with us. That is, the phenomenon could intentionally choose motifs from our science fiction and religion to present itself, knowing that doing so will either A, minimize shock by appearing in familiar forms, or B, maximizing impact by engaging our deepest symbolic resonances. Vallee's notion of an adaptive phenomenon using the imagery of the time aligns with this latter interpretation. It suggests a feedback loop. The intelligence seeds an image, e.g. the flying saucer in 1947. Media spreads it, people's imaginations are primed, and then further phenomena reflect those expectations, reinforcing belief. Indeed, Vallee and others have even speculated that some UFO waves might be engineered psyops, not necessarily by aliens, but possibly by human agencies testing psychological warfare, or by the phenomenon itself as a kind of social experiment. Vallee titled one of his works Messengers of Deception to explore how both government and ufonauts deceived UFO contactee groups. The mass media has been a double-edged sword in the UFO saga. On one side, media coverage has periodically fanned the flames of UFO enthusiasm or panic. The 1947 press frenzy launched the UFO as a pop culture icon. The 1952 Washington, D.C. sightings made front page news and had the U.S. government worried that a maelstrom of kooky hallucination could overwhelm legitimate defense radar signals. In 1977, it feels like film like Close Encounter and the nightly talk shows featuring abductees kept UFOs in the public eye. The media has also propagated specific memes like the Men in Black or the sinister government cover-up narrative, which then shaped how people interpret strange encounters. So, for instance, more witnesses started reporting Men in Black after they became a staple of UFO literature. On the other side, media has been used to debunk and dampen belief when authorities felt things were getting out of hand. A notable instance is the CIA's Robertson panel, which advised orchestrating a public education campaign to reduce interest in flying saucers, including enlisting Hollywood and popular science educators to emphasize conventional explanations. Shortly after, news specials like CBS's UFO Friend, Foe, or Fantasy in 1966, hosted by Walter Cronkite, and magazine articles appeared to soberly explain away UFO sightings. This suggests an awareness that controlling the perception of the phenomenon might be as important as controlling the phenomenon themselves. In a sense, whether or not a literal UFO control system exists, perception management around UFOs has certainly been practiced by human institutions. Conspiracy theorists go further to allege that some spectacular UFO incidents were actually staged by military and intelligence agencies. For example, the 1980 Rendlesham Forest case has been speculatively blamed on PSYOP experiments, either to cover secret technology tests or to gauge mass psychological response. For our purposes, the key idea is that mass perception is an active component in the UFO mystery. If an anomalous control system is at work, it appears to leverage the collective mind and media channels. It is akin to what folklorist Thomas Bullard termed as author of the story. The phenomenon provides seed events, but humans, through storytelling and media propagation, elaborate those into grand narratives. Those narratives then condition the next generation of experiences. Over decades, this creates a mythos, a rich tapestry of alien lore, which itself is maybe the intended product. As Vallée wrote, perhaps the message of the phenomenon is in the myth, not the literal context. For instance, whether or not UFOs physically land, the belief in advanced visitors could be steering humanity's expectations about its future technology and place in the cosmos. Simulation theorists have even mused that if we live in a kind of programmed reality, UFO events could be like update triggers or controlled anomalies introduced to see how our society adapts. In essence, UFO waves and media waves dance together, possibly guided by some unseen hand in the dial of collective experience. Modern data analysis offers ways to examine the interplay. Studies of UFO sightings databases have shown correlations with sociocultural factors. Sightings cluster not only in waves, but around population centers, more people, more reports, and during times of societal stress or fascination. For example, there was a spike in UFO interest in sightings around the turn of the millennia, Y2K, and after the X-Files gained popularity in the 1990s. While skeptics say this is purely sociological, people see what they're primed to see. A control system advocate might counter that the phenomenon responds to our attention appearing more when we look for it. There's an almost quantum physics flavor here, the observer effect, in which observation influences the phenomenon observed. Is the phenomenon reactive to fame? Jacques Vallée once cheekily suggested that UFOs are not objects but processes. They must adjust to our thinking, paraphrased. Okay, so in practice, this means the more seriously society takes UFOs, the more ridiculous or elusive they might behave, and vice versa. Some ufologists note that whenever official investigations ramp up, Project Blue Book in the 1960s or the recent Pentagon UAP task force, the phenomenon has a tendency to slip out of reach, providing tantalizing evidence but never full closure. Finally, from a mythological perspective, one can view the entire 20th century UFO saga as a new collective myth in the making. Media and technology gave a global coherence to what used to be isolated folklore. Now, a farmer in France and a housewife in Argentina could see similar flying saucers because both had access to the same movies and magazines. Carl Jung observed in 1958 that UFOs were serving as a sign of the times, an archetypal expression of our collective psyche state. The Cold War era needed a symbol of unity and salvation, hence Mandela-like saucers and benevolent space brothers. The postmodern era grapples with ambiguity and conspiracy, hence inscrutable phenomena and Men in Black secrecy. The control system, if real, would be intimately entwined with these mythic currents, perhaps even intentionally stimulating them. After all, myths and archetypes strongly influence human behavior. Entire religious and societal norms arise from them. A higher intelligence aiming to steer humanity subtly might well choose myth-making as the vehicle rather than an overt display of power. In this view, mass media is the myth transmission mechanism of today, analogous to tribal oral tradition of old. UFOs have firmly placed themselves in the medium and through it in our collective subconscious. In summary, the role of media and perception suggests that UFO phenomena cannot be treated as isolated objective events. They are interactive experiences co-created by human minds of possibly non-human orchestrators. The control system concept inherently involves the management of belief and awareness, whether one leans toward a skeptical psychosocial model or a literal guiding intelligence. It is clear that UFOs function in the realm of science and stories as much as in physical reality. In the next portion of this podcast, we'll delve deeper into those realms of psyche and symbolism, examining UFOs as archetypal manifestations and probing the idea of consciousness itself being the medium of contact. Oh my God. Archetypes and the collective unconscious, Jung's perspective. The control system hypothesis intersects intriguingly with analytical psychology, especially the ideas of Carl G. Jung. Jung was one of the first notable intellectuals to examine the UFO phenomena seriously in his essay Flying Saucers, A Modern Myth of Things Seen in the Skies in 1958. Although Jung did not propose a control system per se, he interpreted UFOs as an expression of the collective unconscious, essentially an archetypal message to humanity by humanity's own deep psyche. This angle provides a psychological control mechanism view. Our unconscious minds could be projecting UFO imagery as a way to regulate collective stress or to guide us through societal change. Jung's insights dovetail with Vallee's and Keel's in seeing UFOs not as concrete spacecraft, but as meaningful symbols with a role in human affairs. UFOs as mandala archetypes. Jung observed that many UFO reports describe circular disc-like objects, and he linked this to the archetype of the mandala, a symbol of wholeness, unity, and the self in Jungian psychology. Mandalas often appear in dreams and art during times of psychological crisis or transformation, representing the psyche's attempts to recenter and heal itself. In the 1960s, the world was indeed in a profound psychological crisis. The Cold War split humanity in two opposing camps. Nuclear annihilation loomed, and traditional belief systems were eroding in the face of rapid scientific progress. Jung hypothesized the flying saucers were a kind of collective vision, a compensatory archetypal image arising to counter the prevailing anxiety and sense of fragmentation. The very roundness of the saucer, often luminous and halo-like in accounts, suggested to him an image of totality, a reassurance from the unconscious that on a higher level, unity still existed. He wrote that UFOs might be technological mandalas, modern and externalized, yet serving the timeless function of an archetype of wholeness. Crucially, Jung did not assert that UFOs were only hallucinations. He left open the question of their physical reality, but deemed it less important than their psychic impact. It is not presumption that drives me, he said, but my conscience is a psychiatrist that bids me prepare those few who would hear me for coming events in accord with an end of an era. Jung felt that intense global sightings and fascination with UFOs were signals of a monumental shift, possibly the dawning of a new aeon, age of Aquarius, a new myth in formation. People were uneasily dissatisfied and insecure in the mid-20th century, and thus had an insatiable hunger for anything extraordinary. In his analysis, the belief in or hope for salvation from the skies, whether via angels or aliens, was a modern eschatological narrative focusing an expectation of a savior at a time when traditional religions had lost some grip. UFOs, in Jung's words, have become a living myth for the post-war world. Not myth as falsehood, but myth as a profound story which collective psychic energies are channeled. How does this relate to a controlled system? One interpretation is that human collective unconscious might itself be the other orchestrating the phenomenon. Vallee considered this possibility. He once mused whether UFOs could be the Jungian collective unconscious projecting imagery necessary for our survival. In this scenario, if humanity is unknowingly projecting UFO manifestations, it acts as a kind of self-regulating psychic system, pushing symbols into the conscious realm, even seemingly physical real ones, to equilibrate our mental state. This is a rather mystical concept, blurring lines between mind and matter, perhaps akin to ideas in parapsychology that the psyche can cause externalized phenomena. For instance, thought forms or tulpas. Yet it accords with Jung's view of psyche and world as not fully separate, meaningful coincidences. Synchronicities happen when inner states and outer events mirror each other. UFO flats could be gland synchronicities where an inner archetypal surge for wholeness, for gods, for change, coincides with appearances of unexplained phenomena in the sky. Another way Jung's ideas contribute is by identifying thematic content of UFO experiences that aligns with age-old myths. Apart from mandalas, Jung noted the presence of archetypal figures and narratives. For instance, he analyzed the contact details of the 1950s, in which often a wise, human-looking space brother gives moral guidance as a variant of the hero's journey or visitation by an angelic messenger. The space brother was essentially an angelus interpres, a guide from above, reflecting our yearning for wise intervention in a troubled world. Abduction accounts, which rose to prominence after Jung's time, can be seen through a similar lens. They have parallels with shamanic initiation ordeals or the old incubus-succubus folklore of nighttime spirit visitations. The details differ, spaceships and experiments versus broomsticks and spells, but psychologically they involve themes of vulnerability, transformation, and otherworldly contact, possibly indicative of deep unconscious processes, trauma, sexuality, spiritual crises, taking symbolic form. Some Jungian scholars have indeed interpreted abductions as personal mythic dramas akin to visionary journeys of the soul. The control system, if we momentarily consider it as the unconscious, would be a built-in evolutionary mechanism. Jung speculated that UFOs could portend a change in the collective psyche structure, almost like an enunciation of a new spiritualist era. He tied this into his concept of the transition between astrological ages, Pisces to Aquarius, theorizing that the turbulence of such transitions manifests in mass visions and new symbols of meaning. In Jung's frame, it's as if the psyche itself ensures humanity doesn't remain in a state of existential vacuum. When traditional religion lost some explanatory power, the psyche generated a technological myth, UFOs, to re-enchant the cosmos. That self-regulation could be viewed as a teleological control system aimed to preserve psychic balance. Of course, not all agree with Jung's relatively hopeful stance. Some, like the Skunkworks blogger, caution that while a mandala vision might soothe anxiety, it's an imaginary solution to a real problem, nuclear war or climate crisis, and could even distract us with techno-optimism. In that sense, if UFOs are a psychological control mechanism, one might ask, are they helping or hindering? Do they spur us to find real solutions or seduce us with fantasies of salvation by others, ETs or angels, or unlimited high-tech fixes? The critical view sees the myth as potentially ideological. For instance, the UFO mythos often portrays advanced technology as benign and limitless, so spacecraft, miraculous energy sources, etc., which might entrench a faith in technological process at the expense of confronting problems grounded in technology's misuse. On the flip side, abduction lore, with its apocalyptic ecological warnings common in abductees' messages since the 1980s, could be subconsciously urging us to take better care of the planet, which might be genuinely useful. The content of the archetypes matters. In summary, Jung's perspective infuses the UFO control system's discussion with a deep psychological dimension that suggests that beyond any external intelligences, our own mind might be complicit in creating the phenomenon we witness as a way to communicate archetypal truths or warnings to ourselves. UFOs in this light are like a cosmic Rorschach test. They provoke us to project meaning, and in deciphering that meaning, we learn about our collective condition. The overlap between Jung's interpretation and Vallée-Kiel's is that all see UFO events as purposeful communications more than random happenings. The difference lies in who or what is sending the message. Jung leads toward the sender being us, the collective self. Vallée-Kiel leaned toward other, non-human intelligence, though they all admit uncertainty. It could, of course, be a combination, a true other using the language of archetypes, as if hacking our unconscious symbolic system to trigger certain responses. Having considered the socio-cultural and depth psychological angles, we now move to an even more speculative frontier, the idea that UFO phenomenon engage with consciousness and reality at a fundamental level, possibly hinting that what we call real is itself a form of controlled illusion. This includes ideas like the simulation hypothesis and the age-old trickster archetype that challenges the boundary between real and unreal. All right. Consciousness, tricksters, and the simulation hypothesis. One of the most challenging aspects of the UFO control system concept is the suggestion that it is not just external phenomena being controlled, but human consciousness itself. Some theorists argue that UFO experiencers might be a form of direct interaction with mind-altering perception, cognition, and even belief structures. This raises profound questions. Is the control system working through mind-to-mind communication, bypassing normal sensory reality? Could we even be living in a kind of programmed reality where anomalous events like UFOs or subroutines meant to test or evoke our awareness? In this portion of the podcast, we explore these possibilities, drawing on the notion of the trickster and ideas akin to the simulation hypothesis. We also incorporate perspectives from thinkers like Terence McKenna, who saw UFO encounters as related to psychedelic and mystical states, essentially interacting with a transhuman hyperdimensional intelligence existing one quantum away from us. The trickster archetype is a figure found in mythologies worldwide, a cunning, ambiguous character who disrupts normal order, plays pranks, confuses boundaries, yet often unintentionally or intentionally brings about some new balance or insight. Many paranormal researchers, for instance, George P. Hansen in The Trickster and the Paranormal, have noted that UFO phenomena exhibit classic trickster behavior. They appear at the margins of consensus reality of credibility. They tease investigators with tantalizing evidence that vanishes or turns absurd, and they often involve deception. We've already discussed how Vallee's and Keel's descriptions of UFOs emphasize absurdity and playing with us. Hansen argues that the trickster archetype tends to manifest in periods of transition and in liminal spaces, exactly where UFOs often pop up, at dusk or night, in remote areas, or in ambiguous personal states. If the control system has a personality, one might say it is trickster-like. It doesn't confront us directly with overt truths. Instead, it bewilders and challenges. Some have likened UFO encounters to Zen koans, paradoxical experiences that short-circuit rational mind, potentially leading to satori or awakening, or at least a reevaluation of assumptions. There's an interesting overlap here with the consciousness expansion movement of the 1960s and 70s, many involved in early UFO research, including Vallee at SRI in the weird 70s. We're also aware of psychic research, Eastern mysticism, and entheogens, which are psychedelic substances. This was the era of exploring altered states of consciousness. A few researchers even attempted to contact UFO intelligences via telepathy or psychic means. For example, the CIA's Project Stargate touched on remote viewing UFOs. The results were not scientifically conclusive, but anecdotal reports suggested that whatever the UFO intelligence is, it might operate on a mental or symbolic frequency as much as a physical one. One radical idea along these lines is that UFO sightings could be a form of controlled hallucination, not meaning they are simply imaginary, but that they may be projections into the mind by an external source. In other words, the phenomenon might implant visions or experiences directly into witnesses' consciousness, sometimes with physical effects as corroboration. Abduction experiences, for example, often blur the line between objective and subjective. They happen in altered states during sleep or a trance-like paralysis, yet can leave physical marks or radar traces. This duality has led some to propose virtual reality scenarios. Perhaps the abductee's mind is interfaced with a sort of VR where convincing experiences are fed, as some abductees report being shown vividly realistic holograms or visions by the aliens. This concept is eerily resonant with the simulation hypothesis, which posits that our entire reality could be an advanced virtual reality created by higher intelligences. The simulation hypothesis, popularized by philosopher Nick Bostrom and echoed by tech visionaries, argues that if technology progress continues, future civilizations might run detailed simulations of ancestral life, and we could be inside one. If that were true, phenomena like UFOs might be easier to explain. They could be intentional anomalies introduced by the simulation programmers to elicit responses or adjust the system. Some UFO lore enthusiasts have playfully suggested UFOs are like glitches in the Matrix or even debugging tools, a cosmic equivalent of how a game master might insert unexpected events to guide players. While this remains speculative, it offers an intriguing unification of ideas, a total control system at that level of reality. In this view, everything, not just UFOs, is part of an informational construct, and what Vallee calls the control system is just our local experience of that larger programmed evolution. Indeed, Vallee himself, being a computer scientist, used an early analogy that UFOs might be software rather than hardware phenomena. He mused that the UFO intelligence could be manipulating symbols in our information space more than nuts and bolts. The Wired profile on Vallee noted that after years, he suspects the UFO secret is knotted up with the secret of consciousness itself. Consciousness is a fundamental aspect of reality, as some interpretations of quantum physics and various spiritual traditions suggest, and an advanced intelligence might interact with reality by directly influencing consciousness. Under such a framework, mind and matter are not strictly separate, an idea at the heart of Jung's synchronicity principle and of many esoteric philosophies. Terence McKenna, an ethnobotanist and psychedelic philosopher, often discussed UFOs in terms of consciousness and archetype. McKenna saw the UFO as a sort of psychic catalyst, even calling it the glyph of the forward time, a symbol from the future or higher dimensional space dropped in our reality to propel us beyond our current mindset. The UFO is nothing more than an assertion of herself by the goddess into history, McKenna once quipped, saying to science and paternalistically governed organizations, "Not so fast, gentlemen." By this, he meant the UFO is a shock that reminds rational civilization the mystery and the feminine and chaotic force that cannot be tamed. McKenna, influenced by Vallée, also considered that UFOs might be manifestations of the collective imagination. But he believed they were tuned into other dimensions via psychedelic states. In one famous line, he described encountering seemingly alien entities on high doses of the psychedelic DMT and remarked, "Right here and now, one quantum away, there's raging a universe of active intelligence that is transhuman, hyperdimensional, and extremely alien. What is driving religious feeling today is a wish for contact with this other universe. This captures the idea that our reality is embedded in or adjacent to a larger living matrix of consciousness, which is McKenna's hyperspace, and that the UFO might be a bridge or intruder from that adjacent realm. People's intense desire for UFO enclosure or alien contact, in his view, was a modern form of spiritual longing for the other, for communion with the greater mind. McKenna even toured with a vision or version of the control system. He imagined history itself as guided by what he called the eschaton, a transcendental object at the end of time that was attracting humanity toward it, influencing events backward through time. He sometimes hinted that the UFO might be a reflection or emanation of that future transcendental object, appearing now to accelerate our progress towards some omega point. While these ideas are speculative in the extreme, they highlight the millenarian undertones often present in UFO discourse. The sense that an encounter with non-human intelligence might transform human consciousness on a civilization scale, heralding a new age. If we entertain the simulation or consciousness-based control system idea, the next question is, who built it? Here we enter philosophical territory. Possibilities include, number one, advanced extraterrestrials. An alien civilization so advanced it uplifts earlier species by seeding them in a controlled reality, occasionally inserting anomalies like UFOs to guide them. This echoes certain ancient astronaut theories, but with a high-tech twist. We'd be in a cosmic laboratory simulation. Two, our future selves. Perhaps future humanity, having mastered time or simulation, is influencing its own past to ensure certain outcomes. In science fiction and some fringe theories, UFO occupants are sometimes described as time-traveling descendants or future humans pruning their timeline. Three, spiritual entities or deities. One could recast traditional cosmologies, angels, jinn, etc., in simulation terms, entities in higher layers of reality who have admin privileges over our server. This is not far from what mystics of various religions believe, that angels or spirits can intrude into our world to direct human affairs. The control system might simply be a modern, tech-flavored way of talking about providence or fate, except operating through a technological metaphor, programs, illusions, instead of miracles. Then there's the fourth is the universe itself, panpsychism. There's a philosophical idea that the universe has mind-like qualities, sometimes called panpsychism or the Gaia hypothesis, when applied to Earth. Under this, the control system could be an emergent property of reality, striving for balance, and UFOs are like white blood cells responding to cultural pathogens or catalysts for growth. Vallée mentioned even planet Earth, Gaia, as a possible source for UFO control signals. Imagining that the biosphere might generate phenomena to protect or advance itself. For instance, scare humans away from nuclear war by showing terrifying unknowns. At our current level of knowledge, these ideas remain unfalsifiable. However, they serve to broaden the context in which we think about UFOs beyond lights in the sky to questions of what is reality and how does mind relate to matter. The UFO control system lore thus ends up intersecting with the most profound philosophical questions. It is no accident Vallée's recent dialogues, like the 2024 Document Journal conversation, are with scholars like Jeffrey Kripal, who study consciousness, mysticism, and the limits of science. UFOs have drawn interest from consciousness researchers because any phenomenon that can apparently manipulate perception, space, and time, as many high strangeness cases claim, could hold clues to understanding consciousness itself. For instance, if abduction experiences involve out-of-body or telepathic components, which many do, studying them might inform us about the capabilities of the mind. Some have even linked or likened abductions to NDEs, near-death experiences, or astral projections, suggesting the control system might operate in that liminal state between physical and mental realms. In sum, the consciousness-centric view of the control system posits that the UFO phenomenon is as much an inner event as an outer one, and engages our awareness in a direct way that challenges our notions of reality. The tricksterish absurdity, the messages delivered, the reality-bending effects like objects that blink out or entities walking through walls, all of it hints that the usual rules can be suspended. If the UFO intelligence is doing this deliberately, it might be akin to a teacher giving us impossible puzzles to crack to evolve our thinking. Or if we are in a simulation, it could be testing the boundaries of our comprehension, possibly waiting for us to realize the truth of our condition, a theme in some science fiction like the Matrix film, where bizarre experiences alert characters to their simulated reality. Ultimately, whether one takes these consciousness and simulation ideas literally or metaphorically, they reinforce a key theme. The UFO control system forces a confrontation with the unknown and with our own minds. It destabilizes ordinary reality in a way that can be frightening but also enlightening. Those who have undergone intense encounters often report a transformed worldview, sometimes more spiritual, sometimes simply less certain of anything. Many feel they have a mission or a broadened sense of Earth's fragility after such events. Commenting on abductions is being shown Earth's environmental destruction, effectively turning experiencers into passionate environmentalists. Could that be the point, to create cadres of charged individuals who then influence society? If so, it's an unconventional method, but history has often been moved by visionary experiences. Consider Joan of Arc's visions or Muhammad's angelic visions by shaping entire cultures. All right, in the next portion of this podcast, we'll circle back to history, examining how earlier ages' anomalous experiences compared to today's, and what that continuity suggests about a long-standing control system. So, historical precedent, folklore, religion, and demonology revisited. The UFO control system hypothesis gains credibility, or at least rich context, when one considers the historical precedents for UFO-like phenomena. If indeed an intelligence has been interacting with humanity all along, adapting its appearance to our culture, we should see traces in folklore, myth, and religious history. In fact, we do. The annals of human culture are replete with strange encounters that mirror modern UFO cases in all but name, from ancient gods descending from the sky, to medieval fairy abductions, to mythical visions of saints, to the demonological incidents detailed by witch hunters. The patterns recur. This section explores some of these parallels, supporting the notion that a control system might be a centuries-old influence interpreted differently in each era. One of Vallee's significant contributions in Passport to Magonia was drawing a parallel line between folklore of the Fae, fairies, elves, etc., and contemporary UFO occupant stories. In European folklore, fairies were often associated with lights in the sky or on the ground, will-o'-the-wisps, dancing lights, leading travelers astray. Fairies could abduct humans, particularly young men or women, sometimes for interbreeding or nursing fairy children, a striking analog to the modern alien abduction motif of genetic sampling and hybrid babies. The time distortion reported by abductee, hours feel like minutes, and vice versa, also appears in fairy tales. Those who visit the fairy realm often return to find decades have passed, though they felt it was an hour. Additionally, folklore describes people being led in circles, fairy rings, and confused, akin to some UFO encounters where witnesses experience disorientation or chasing a light in circles. As cited earlier, Vallee notes Celtic stories of fairies leaving magic circles, scorched rings on the grass, which in the 20th century became known as saucer nests and later tied to crop circle phenomena. Even the physical descriptions can align. Fairies were often depicted as diminutive beings, 3 to 4 feet tall, sometimes with large heads, notably reminiscent of the gray aliens of today, minus the technology. These similarities suggest that perhaps the same phenomenon was involved, interpreted through a pastoral animistic lens and a pseudoscientific lens now. Many episodes from religious history bear UFO-like hallmarks. When re-examined, a famous one is the Fatima apparitions of 1917 in Portugal. 3 children reported visitations by a radiant lady from heaven, and on October 13th, 1917, a crowd of tens of thousands witnessed the so-called miracle of the sun. The sun was seen to spin, change colors, and plummet toward the earth in a zigzag motion, causing fear and awe. Some UFO researchers have noted that this description, a disk of light gyrated in the sky, is not unlike a mass UFO sighting. Indeed, it had occurred in 1977 or had it occurred in 1977, it would have been labeled a UFO. This social effect was enormous. It reinvigorated Catholic faith among the populace and gave rise to a shrine. One could postulate that if a control system wished to deliver a message in 1917, appearing as the Virgin Mary to a peasant Catholic community was the appropriate cultural form. The content of the Fatima message, call to prayer, repentance, a vision of hell, and cryptic prophecies is very different from, say, the Space Brother messages in the 1950s, yet both serve to influence belief and behavior within their milieu. We already discussed the Guadalupe apparition in 1531, which Villay highlighted. Another historical instance in the Old Testament, the prophets Ezekiel's vision, a fiery flying wheel in the sky accompanied by strange living creatures, has often been anachronistically interpreted as a UFO encounter. While that might be a stretch, it's illustrative that phenomena of lights, wheels, and celestial chariots are common in sacred narratives. It was simply attributed to angels or gods. Ancient India's Vedic texts speak of vimanas, flying crafts of the gods, and battles in the sky. The Roman historian Livy and others recorded prodigious aerial signs like shields flying in the sky. So-called miracle traditions, saints levitating or sorcerers summoning lights, might also intersect with this discussion, though they are harder to tie directly to UFOs. All right. During the witch hunt era of early modern Europe, demonologists compiled reports from alleged witches and demoniacs. Some of these involve nighttime visitations by non-human entities, abduction to strange realms. The witches' Sabbath often supposedly involved being taken to a remote mountaintop to meet the devil, and sexual experiences with incubi, succubi, i.e. demonic beings. Again, motifs not far removed from what some alien abductees report, being floated out of bed, taken to a strange place, subjected to invasive procedures, sometimes experienced sexually. The key difference is interpretive frame. A Puritan villager in 1960 had no concept of extraterrestrials, so a frightening entity in their bedroom was a demon or devil. Today, a secular person might call the same experience an alien abduction. The sleep paralysis phenomenon likely accounts for some of these cases in both eras. A person half dreaming, projecting an entity in their bedroom, but it's curious that the motifs chosen map as cultural fears, devil versus gray alien, so well. It's exactly what a cultural adaptive control system would do, instill experiences that fit the mythic narratives of the time, perhaps to exploit fear or to reinforce moral structures. In medieval times, a demon encounter reaffirmed the reality of the devil and the need for piety. In modern times, an alien encounter can similarly alter life direction, causing one to question materialist worldviews or champion environmental causes given by the Space Brothers. If one steps back, one can see the whole span of recorded strange phenomena as a kind of long-running influence campaign. A skeptical interpretation might say humans create these narratives themselves during social stress. So, for instance, waves of witch panics, or the dancing mania of the Middle Ages, or 19th century spiritualist seances, etc., are human psychological flukes. The control system view, conversely, might say a single intelligence used different ops at different times. In pagan times, as appearing as gods and nymphs. In Christian times, as angels or demons, depending on desired effect. In New Age times, as Pleiadian star family, and so on. Each manifestation could be seen as nudging the society's development. This is reminiscent of ideas like John Keel's Council of Seven from Our Haunted Planet, or Arthur C. Clarke's Childhood's End, where aliens posed as the devil to ultimately guide humanity. Clarke's fiction, interestingly, had aliens known as overlords who had a policy of appearing as the human image of Satan to fulfill ancient images, a twist on adaptive appearances. Villay often emphasizes that whatever the phenomenon is, it's likely been with us throughout history. This continuity is an argument against the extraterrestrial hypothesis that aliens only started visiting in 1947, and for something more entrenched in our reality, be it Earth-based or interdimensional. The pre-modern UFO sightings, compiled in Wonders in the Sky, show that people saw airships and globes of light long before human flight and encountered humanoid figures associated with them. For example, a German broadsheet from 1561 depicts a mass sighting of many colored orbs and cylindrical objects over Nuremberg, essentially a UFO flap, interpreted then as a divine omen or atmospheric wonder. Such cases suggest that the appearances of strange aerial phenomenon is not new, only our interpretation and framing changed. If indeed a control system has been operating over centuries and implies a long-term project of at least a persistent interaction. This opens daunting questions. Are the intelligence's goals patient and gradual? So, for instance, slowly nudging us towards some spiritual maturation over millennia, or is it simply that the Earth is a stage where recurrent drama is paid with each culture? Perhaps each era's paradigm, mythic, religious, scientific, is tested and prodded by these anomalies until it breaks and transforms. For instance, in the age of faith, anomalous experiences often reinforced faith, miracles of saints, etc., but by also causing witch scares, they contributed to discrediting medieval superstition, ushering in their age of reason. Then, in the age of reason and enlightenment, anomalous sightings like mysterious airships or Mesmer's trance phenomena challenged rigid rationalism, contributing to the Romanic mystical revival. In the 20th century, just as secular materialism seemed poised to dismiss spiritual questions entirely, along came UFOs. Not enough to prove anything to the scientific establishment, but enough to intrigue millions of lay people with the possibility of other intelligences and dimensions. In effect, the phenomenon keeps poking holes in our intellectual complacency, a rather beneficial function if the aim is to keep us seeking, wondering, and not too arrogant about what we think we know. Conversely, one could see it as simply exploitation. Earlier demonization experiences often played on people's fears and led to social strife, i.e., witch trials. Some UFO waves have also induced panic or at least distraction. So there's the 1938's War of the Worlds radio broadcast by Orson Welles triggered fear of invasion, albeit that was fictional and a media event, but it shows how belief can cause real impact. It's possible the control system, if real, is not morally concerned with human outcomes. It may be an experiment or a game to it. Jacques Vallée himself has oscillated on this, sometimes hinting at a nurturing intent, other times labeling it messengers of his deception, implying manipulative or even malevolent tactics. To ground this with citations, the Skunkworks blog critique gave examples of how the alleged others' interventions might align with earthly power structures. So, for instance, Guadalupe aiding colonization. If the control system at Guadalupe seems on the side of settler colonialism by helping subdue indigenous religions, one might ask, is the phenomenon simply amplifying the dominant trend of the era? Perhaps it isn't guiding us progressively, but rather amplifying what other psychosocial sources are already winning, for better or worse. In 1950s America, the space age optimism and technocracy were winning, and UFOs took the shape that reinforced techno-optimism, saucers with advanced tech. That later fed into Silicon Valley-esque dreams and even militarization of space. Only when the environmental movement and nuclear fears grew did UFO narratives shift to cautionary tales, abductions often warn about nuclear war or ecology. It's fascinating and puzzling how the phenomenon can cut both ways. As a final note in this historical survey, it's clear that human interpretation is a huge factor. A control system could stage the same essential event, say a luminous apparition, in different times and get wildly different results depending on how it's interpreted by local observers and power structures. Catholic Church might declare a miracle and gain converts. A tribal society might identify a trickster spirit and perform rituals. A modern scientist might call it ball lightning and move on. In effect, even if the control system is real, it has to work through the filter of our minds and cultures. This reinforces the earlier point. It's an interactive phenomenon. Human beings are not passive in this. Our frameworks help co-create the final outcome. This fact might even be part of the purpose. It stimulates us to develop new frameworks. After all, UFO lore helps spawn or popularize several new ideas in science and tech, exobiology, astrobiology, the serious search for life in space, SETI, even concepts of multidimensions and simulation have been propelled by grappling with UFO enigmas. So perhaps the control system gradually seeds ideas that we later formalize scientifically. Today, talk of multiple dimensions is mainstream physics, brains, multiverse theories, something Vallée speculated on in the 1970s, largely inspired by UFO high strangeness, the interdimensional hypothesis. The line between inspiration and deception can be thin. Having canvassed folklore, religion, and demonology parallels, we see that if there is a guiding phenomenon, it has been with us across epochs. It may well have shaped history. Indirectly, at the very least, it's an argument for humility. Modern UFO experiences are not unprecedented. They might be part of a continuum of unknowns interacting with human knowns. As science historian Thomas Kuhn once pointed out, anomalies are the seeds of paradigm shifts. UFOs and their historical cousins could be such seeds, hinting that our current paradigm, materialist, anthropocentric, is due for a transformation. All right. Lastly, synthesis, speculation on purpose and implications. Bringing together these threads, we can now ask if there is a control system behind UFOs and related phenomenon, what might be its ultimate purpose, and what does considering this possibility reveal to us about ourselves? While definitive answers are elusive, several speculative possibilities emerge from the analysis. So, evolutionary catalyst. The control system might be aimed at advancing human consciousness or civilization by periodically challenging our worldviews through bursts of unexplained encounters. It prevents stagnation and spurs intellectual and spiritual growth. Under this view, UFO waves are like cosmic midterms testing that we have learned and pushing us to ask new questions. The end goal might be to prepare humanity for eventual integration to a larger cosmic community or simply to help us reach a next stage of understanding reality. Jacques Vallée alluded to training us for a new behavior or providing imagery for long-term survival, a possible nod that we're being readied for something, be it contact or a paradigm where mind and matter are better understood. If one takes a long-range perspective, one could argue the phenomenon have already changed society. Compare 1900 versus 2000. Belief in other intelligent life is now mainstream. Ideas of dimensions and psychic phenomena are discussed more openly. Humanity has gone to space. It's as though in tandem with actual technological progress, a sort of mythic progress occurred from angels to aliens to maybe now interdimensional energy beings. Some New Age circles speak of UFOs in terms of light or energy. One can imagine in a few centuries, if this trend continued, humanity might transcend the simplistic E.T. craft idea and interact with the phenomenon on a consciousness to consciousness level, thus graduating from the control system's classroom. And there's social control or coercion. Conversely, some suspect the control system could be about managing humanity in a more manipulative sense, keeping us in line or even cultivating us as resources. John Keel's darker hints fall here. If extraterrestrials view us as lesser beings, they might trick us with religions or fads that serve their ends. What those ends are remains conjectural. Perhaps extracting emotional energy, as some occult theories hold, or preventing us from discovering truths prematurely. In the science fictional version, maybe Earth is an observational theater or even a farm. Charles Fort's quip that the Earth is a farm, we are someone's property, encapsulates this unsettling possibility. The phenomenon's deceptive nature, lying to contactees, giving false prophecies, etc., could support the idea of control through confusion, a strategy to keep us from becoming too independent or technologically dangerous until a certain time. Then there's self-regulating Gaia or collective unconscious. The purpose might not involve an external agenda at all, but an immanent teleology. The Earth or the human species self-correcting. Under this interpretation, there isn't a grand intelligence planning moves, but rather a kind of emergent property of complex systems. Weird things happen at the boundaries that serve to steer the system away from chaos. For example, when society veers too far into rigid dogma, anomalies erupt that undermine certainty. For instance, the spiritualist movement and ghost phenomena burgeoning in the late 19th century when scientific materialism was at peak arrogance. Are you sure it was at peak arrogance in the late 19th century? We might be there. We might hit there in 2020. When society risks despair, nuclear threat, hopeful anomalies appear, contactees preaching peace, etc. It's almost like a homeostasis function, similar to how an individual psyche produces dreams to balance attitudes. The world psyche produces mass visions or encounters to balance cultural attitudes. And maybe there's no single purpose, a multiplicity. It's possible we err in seeking one unified purpose. Perhaps there are multiple factions or sources behind various phenomena, each with its own agenda. Sudden encounters do seem benevolent and inspiring. So, for instance, people who feel spiritually awakened by a close encounter, where others are terrifying and harmful, close encounters that cause trauma or injury. Maybe different types of others interact, some nurturing, some indifferent, some opportunistic. The control system might not be monolithic, but rather an amalgam of influences. This complexity would mirror human history, where multiple nations or groups vied to influence less developed peoples for different reasons: colonial powers, missionaries, traders, etc. The UFO lore has its own hints of this. Contactees often speak of benign Nordics versus malevolent reptilians, or military lore of good versus bad aliens. While those specifics are unproven, the general idea that more than one intelligence could be present is plausible. If true, what we call the phenomenon might be the net effect of several control systems intersecting or even conflicting. It would certainly complicate our attempts to discern a clear pattern. All right, so what are the implications for human society and knowledge? Regardless of purpose, taking the control system idea seriously encourages a more interdisciplinary and humble approach to knowledge. It tells scientists that not everything can be shoehorned into current paradigms. The phenomena reside between disciplines, physics, psychology, theology, and thus demand holistic study. It also might explain why progress on the UFO question is so hard. If it's a moving target that adapts to our theories, then standard experimental method, which assumes an independent dynamic subject, will struggle. This resonates with what Gary Nolan, a Stanford professor interested in UFO materials, said about mainstream attitude. Scientists historically avoided UFOs in part due to stigma, but if the control system idea is right, the phenomenon itself might cultivate its unbelievability as a protective layer. The absurdity ensures academia laughs it off, leaving the phenomenon free to do its work unbothered. As Vallée noted, the phenomena, are a lot smarter than we are, which implies any attempt to outwit or capture the others might be as futile as ants trying to study humans. For a culture at large, embracing the possibility of a control system could be paradigm shifting. It would mean acknowledging that human history and behavior might not be entirely self-determined, that there could be an unseen hand in our development, an idea both exhilarating and disconcerting. It raises ethical and existential questions. If our beliefs can be manipulated, how do we find truth? Should we resist the influence or accept it as guidance? Historically, humans often attributed events to gods or fate, which had a similar effect of externalizing control. Modern secular society moved away from that, putting faith in human agency and reason. The UFO control system concept, in a way, reinforces a secularized quasi-technological version of destiny or higher power. How we integrate that without regressing into superstition is a challenge. Perhaps the answer lies in treating these ideas with scholarly rigor, but open-mindedness, as this podcast attempts, acknowledging the data and patterns even if they don't fit neatly into current science. Oh my God, this is never ending. Another implication is on the personal level. People who encounter the high strangeness in the UFO control system often experience what's called ontological shock, a fundamentally unsettling of one's worldview. The existence of a control system writ large would be a collective ontological shock. It might compel a rethinking of philosophical questions. Are we free? What is the nature of reality? For example, in some cases, at time loops or retrocausality, UFOs appearing to predict events, etc. Our understanding of time could be off, and mind and matter interplay. Our understanding of consciousness needs expansion. In that sense, even without full comprehension, grappling with UFO phenomena has already stimulated many cutting-edge scientific hypotheses. As we mentioned, multiple universes, holographic reality, etc. In a way, the lack of resolution is perhaps the intended state for now. It keeps us searching deeply. As the saying goes, sometimes the journey is more important than the destination. The phenomenon constantly gives us just enough reality to keep us intrigued and just enough absurdity to keep us baffled, a perfect formula to engender lifelong curiosity. Some thinkers believe this curiosity and resultant creativity could be the greatest gift of the control system. Terence McKenna has suggested that confronting the unknown via things like UFOs breaks the logjam in our societal imagination. We then explore new art, new science, new metaphors. Indeed, UFOs have inspired countless works of fiction, speculative science, and also alternative spirituality movements. For instance, the entire New Age movement with channeling ascended extraterrestrials owes to UFO lore entwined with Eastern mysticism, a syncretism that itself is an interesting cultural evolution. It is important in a scholarly treatment to also note the skeptical counterpoints. One could argue that all the above patterns, parallels, and effects might be the result of purely human pattern recognition and storytelling with no external control needed. Humans have a propensity for magical thinking and conspiratorial interpretation. Maybe the control system is an illusion, a narrative we constructed to make sense of disparate world weird events. A skeptic might say folklore parallels exist because human brains invent similar fantasies under similar conditions like sleep paralysis or social crises. The phenomenon's adaptability could be selection bias. We forget the cases that don't fit our theories, and perhaps any real UFOs are just misidentified natural phenomena or secret military tech, plus a dose of hoaxes. This view demands we consider carefully, are we connecting the dots that aren't truly connected? However, even a hard skeptic must contend with an irreducible core of unexplained cases, and more so with human experiences. Even if UFOs were all misidentified, mundane object, the experience of contact, abduction, or seeing a craft is undeniably real to those people and has real effects. Studying that is still valuable, as the psychosocial approach does. In that light, the control system could be reinterpreted as a metaphor for mass psychology and memetics. Perhaps no literal NHI is needed. The idea of UFOs itself becomes a control system when propagated. Some sociologists have likened UFO beliefs to a new religion that provides meaning and community. The truth likely lies between purely subjective and purely objective, a complex hybrid of mind and mystery. All right, so the notion of a UFO control system remains a daring and thought-provoking hypothesis at the fringes of ufology and intellectual discourse. It posits that behind the enduring enigma of UFOs and related phenomena lies not a straightforward extraterrestrial visitation, but a phenomenological matrix of persistent intelligence-guided interaction with humanity that transcends our standard categories of real versus unreal, physical versus mental, natural versus supernatural. Throughout this podcast, we trace how this idea arises from multiple lines of inquiry: Jacques Vallée's analysis of UFO patterns of cultural mirroring, John Keel's ultra-terrestrial theory and recognition of deception, Carl Jung's archetypal projections from the collective unconscious, and various socio-cultural observations about media and myth. We also ventured into the speculative territories of simulation theory and consciousness, recognizing that to grapple with a possible control system is to confront fundamental questions about reality and our place within it. In summarizing these perspectives, several key insights emerge. Number one, UFO phenomena are deeply entwined with human culture and perception. They do not operate as isolated nuts and bolts events, but rather as experiences laden with symbolic meaning, tailored whether by an external agent or by our unconscious to the worldview of the witness. This culturally relativistic behavior hints at an intelligence that communicates through signs and myths rather than through overt contact. It suggests that any true understanding of UFOs demands not only physics and radar, but anthropology, psychology, theology, a truly interdisciplinary approach. Number two, there's an observable continuity between historical anomalous encounters and modern UFO reports. This continuity lends weight to the idea of a long-term phenomenon acting through different masks. By comparing fairy lore, religious visions, and demonological cases with UFO experiences, we see common threads in witness entities, abductions, time distortions, transformative messages. Such parallels encourage us to view UFOs not as an isolated craze of the space age, but the latest chapter in an ongoing human interaction with the unknown. A control system that persists through history implies a purposeful unfolding over history, possibly guiding the evolution of beliefs and paradigms. The UFO control system concept challenges the modern rationalist paradigm. It reinforces mystery, intelligence, perhaps even purpose into a worldview that has tried to purge teleology and agency from natural phenomenon. If taken seriously, it forces a reevaluation of strict materialism. At minimum, it exposes the limitations of our current science when dealing with an elusive subject and might react to observation. It asks us as scholars to be comfortable with ambiguity and paradox, to hold in mind both the physical evidence, radar returns, trace landing cases, etc., and the high strangeness, telepathy, apparitions, without discarding one or the other. Number four, human consciousness is central to the mystery. Whether the control system originates in an external mind or the collective unconscious, the battleground is human awareness. It manipulates perception, belief, emotion. This has double-edged implication. On one hand, it suggests we may be malleable in ways we don't realize, a humbling thought, and we might be puppeted at times by greater forces. On the other hand, it hints that our minds themselves might have untapped powers if, for instance, archetypes can externalize into quasi-physical visions. This points to a psychokinetic aspect of consciousness. In either case, understanding UFOs might go hand in hand with breakthroughs in understanding mind and consciousness. And then number five, no consciousness exists on the intentions behind, or no consensus exists on the intentions behind the phenomena. Our exploration shows interpretations ranging from benign, educated, trickster to malevolent deceiver. Possibly all contain some truth for different encounters. For now, we can perhaps only judge by outcomes on a case-by-case basis. Some individuals claim positive, life-affirming results from their UFO experiences, new purpose, healing, etc., while others suffer trauma or years of fear. On a collective level, the UFO topic has so far not led to any catastrophic, if anything. It's been a background hum that occasionally surges. In the Cold War, one might argue, it provided a unifying myth. We are not alone. We are one human species under potential alien scrutiny. This counteracted some divisiveness in the current area of technological upheaval. UFOs, or now UAPs, gaining mainstream attention might eventually force more global cooperation in answering the question. Thus, if the control system has an end game, it still conceals it well. We are, in a sense, like characters in a story, trying to figure out the author's intent from within the plot. In conclusion, the idea that of a UFO control system invites us into a grand speculative synthesis of knowledge. It does not offer the comfort of a proven theory. Instead, it offers a framework to integrate disparate mysteries. UFOs, ghost lights, mystical visions, psychic phenomena under one conceptual umbrella. It provokes us to keep asking what lies behind the veil of our perceptions and to remain vigilant that answer might come in forms we least expect. As scholars, we should neither We should neither swallow whole every wild claim nor dismiss the consistent patterns that do emerge. The attitude most fitting may be constructive open-mindedness to treat the control system lore as a working hypothesis that can generate research questions and guide comparative analysis, even as we hold it loosely, ready to update it or abandon it should clearer evidence arise. Perhaps fittingly, one of Jung's favorite quotes and Vallet's by evidence of him writing in the diary comes from Bernard of Chartres. We are dwarves perched on the shoulders of giants. We see more and farther than our predecessors, not because we have keener vision or greater height, but because we are lifted up and borne aloft on their gigantic structure. In the context of UFOs, we might say we stand on the shoulders of centuries of folklore and decades of ufology. Giants like Vallet and Keel, they gave us a peek at a larger picture. From this vantage, we can scan the horizon of mystery. What we see is tantalizing and incomplete, lights in the distance moving purposefully, but we see farther than those before. It will be the task of future researchers armed with new tools and perhaps a matured paradigm to close the gap. Until then, the control system hypothesis remains a stimulating compass in the terra incognita of phenomena studies, whether the compass points to the truth or merely reflects our own needs, our needles of imagination. Following it has the merit of expanding our intellectual boundaries. In grappling with the UFO control system, we are ultimately grappling with the boundaries of human understanding and testing the controls of our own system of thought. And with 1 minute left to spare, I am done. And I can barely see straight at this point. All right, now I gotta go through the comments. I'm gonna blast through these folks, so please forgive me in advance. Okay. Hey, thank you, Ellie, softly. Sue says this channel is way too interesting to unsub. Okay. Yeah, Justin Miller said I got red-pilled living in Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Yeah, I live in Northern California. You can imagine how red-pilled I am. Okay. I'm not going to read everything, so YouTube kept auto-deleting that. Oh, boy. Sounds about right. Break it into 2 episodes. I don't know what Jesus is, but that's his book against the woke. Usually I do replays at 1.5. Glad I'm live. Let's see. Best. Somebody should send that to Duncan and ask them to hire me. Dunkin' Donuts probably sponsored by. I'll even do the commercial with a Boston accent if they'd like, or a masshole accent. Imagine having a paralysis demon talking that fast with that strained look on your face. Oh boy. Couldn't you just put the text on the screen instead of reading so fast? I don't want to hear Sean run an auction. Can you also post a link to the paper? I mean, I already feel bad enough reading it, but linking it to work I didn't do is even worse. Whoa. Here we go. Okay. Sorry, I'm just going really fast, folks. Just please forgive me. Yeah, I know. I'm actually curious to see what people have said when I was going super fast. Oh, you're talking about Roger said DG is saying when the Virgin Mary appeared before me and others in Bosnia, still to this day. Oh, did you go to Medjugorje? Is that what you're talking about? Okay, so Woo Riders DG saying I'm all in on Steve Mears and Nathaniel Guerrero's theory of the phenomenon is all the same thing, just changes for each person encounter. There's a good side and an evil side. Oops. Yeah, Keel is the Mothman guy for sure. Hey, Chile Jalal. Good to see you. Yeah, where is Mr. L? Gray L. Okay. Oh, I'm sure they met. I'm sure they met. I need the coffee to hit fast. Okay, cool. Yep. Justin Miller says energy and cognitive weapons are now line items in the military. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, they yeah, I think I saw that on the appropriation bill. Yeah, I'm like 4 minutes over, so I'm just going really fast, people. Okay, so Solite US, James Fox is apparently coming out with new info in an upcoming event about the Virginia UFO incident. Spiritual Ascension says, I'm going to be honest here. Some may be offended, but that's just how I roll. It's hard to absorb what you're saying when you're reading at 100 miles an hour. You can slow down to like point 0.5 speed. That's what I would recommend. You can just watch it slower. Plus I get credit for more minutes that way too. So maybe I should read fast. Don't immanentize the eschaton. It's worse than squeezing the Charmin. That's correct, Scott. Hey, SNX Radio. Welcome. Yeah, so Spiritual Ascension says check SNX Radio, guys. Amazing show. Yeah, I got yeah to check them out. But just wait till this live stream's over. Oops, what was that? Yeah, I could do that. I mean, I gotta check it out, but just yeah, there's send me an email. You can see just if you go to the not description, but wherever the place where you can click on my channel and find the email, just send me an email and then we can discuss. I couldn't sustain that for 30 pages. I read 30 single space pages. Well, 28, call it, because 2 pages were like works cited basically. It's a reading of volume 11 of Lenin. I don't know, maybe. Oh, really? Well, tell Pavel thank you. Solet US Expat says Pavel of Psychoactivo podcast used a clip of you interviewing Peter Lavenda. That video has gotten 23,000 views so far. Maybe you'll see a spike in views. The video is just 21 hours old. I I love that his clip got more views, got like four times, at least four times more views, probably more than that, probably five times more views than the actual episode on my channel. That's how that's how well the algorithm works for me. But I'm glad he shared that. I actually am very appreciative for him. Uh, I should have him on at some point. Just to he seems like a good dude. I just haven't. I've been like crazy. Hey, Philibidus. I'm hanging here, but my bulldog's falling out. Her eyes glazed over, then snoring. Okay. Good Lord, how many? Thank you for commenting, folks. I always screw myself sometimes by having too much stuff to read. Okay, I must be close to the end. Scott, you did it! You did it! Sorry that I I shouldn't have done that. That was really insensitive. Yay! You did it! Pizza party. Okay. That, okay. That's really insensitive. Thank you, Pinky Marie. Appreciate you. Thank you, Spiritual Ascension. I appreciate you. I kind of just like I have so much to read because I started like 40 minutes late that I just had to catch up. That's why I went on the like went crazy. So yes, you and Coley should do a show together. Let's make it happen. Yeah, um just email me. Yeah, just again, just use the email on the site and then you figure it out. Actually, I literally have since the beginning when I was doing this stuff, I do have those summaries. I mean, I don't necessarily I will ad lib in select moments, right, where it'll say something I disagree with. But for the most part, I have everything stored. So hmm. There might be a way I can use what's it called? Now I'm like completely. It begins with an S. Maybe I wouldn't put it on YouTube, but maybe I could probably just put them up on Substack or something. But I don't want people to think it's my writing though. Like I need to maybe just have links where I don't push it out on people and I don't claim that it's my writing. But I have all of them. Like I've saved all the scripts. So it's not like I just discard them or delete them. I save everything. So that's actually yeah. I also that guy Philip, his last name's Philip. Why am I not remembering his name? On like Third Eye Drops. I want to talk to him too. I think he's a pretty smart guy. Whoa. Pinky Marie says, I was in a coma for 24 to 30 hours. I'm thankful I survived, but I remember actually I'm well. I came from the sky through the hospital window and in my body. Apparently, I was talking to my future hub. Whoa, that's pretty cool. I mean, it's cool that you got out of the coma and we're talking to you. It was not cool that you went into a coma. It's very clear, but thank you for sharing that experience. Okay, so Tim Beck says, Sean, military strategist, podcast host extraordinaire, concerned citizen, speed reader, workaholic, touches many base. Thanks, bud. Get some sleep. I have to finish editing the audio on the second Mike Patterson video. So before I go to sleep, that's like the one other thing I have to get done today. Whoa. Okay, you just write a disclaimer saying it's AI provided content. You can add links to this in the description of the videos. Yeah. It'll just take time I don't have. But and I don't want to blast it out to like current subscribers. So I can just make it maybe I have like a really low tier, like a $1 subs like stack thing to just justify me doing all that work. Yeah, actually, you always remind me. You promote me solely at US Expat more than I promote myself, so I appreciate you doing that. So, just to reiterate that point. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, and then I could link it to the Substack, and then because right now everything I publish is immediately available to everybody, and then it just gets archived at the end of the month, and then that's where the paid wall is. Because I kind of just created the Substack to basically write down dreams or strange dreams. So, okay. That's all I got, folks. I feel like I'm blind right now. So, have a wonderful rest of your weekend. And hopefully you have a good week next week. God bless and peace out. Oh, hold on. One more comment. Two more comments. Dreamstack. Yeah, it's kind of that's I should have named it. It's called Along the Path Darkly or something like that, but yeah. All right, good night everyone. See you soon.
Thank you.